"Daddy, please don't make her sell her shoes." What the bikers found under that bridge changed everything. She was 6 years old, and she already knew what it sounded like when hope ran out. It wasn't a cry. It was quieter than that, the small, broken voice of a child standing on a cracked sidewalk, clutching a cardboard sign in hands too cold for the weather, asking strangers on motorcycles a question no 6-year-old should ever have to ask. "Please, will somebody buy my doll? Just $5. That's all I need." The 5 Harleys that had been roaring down Maple Street went silent, one by one, until the only sound left was the wind moving through a little girl's tangled hair. Her name was Daisy. Her sneakers were 2 sizes too big, handed down from a cousin. Her jacket didn't close all the way. And in her small arms, she held the one thing she had left to give away, a worn cloth doll with a missing button eye, the only toy she owned. Behind her, slumped against the brick wall of a boarded-up laundromat, sat her mother, Renee, wrapped in a blanket that had seen better decades, her face hollow in a way that no parent's face should ever be. The biggest of the riders, a man they called Tiny, because irony ran deep in that club, swung off his bike before the engine had even finished dying. His boots hit the pavement like a decision being made. He knelt down in front of Daisy, his 6'4" frame folding down to meet her eyes. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough as gravel but careful, like he was handling something fragile. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" Daisy's chin trembled. She held her doll a little tighter, the way kids do when they're about to say something that scares them. "My mommy hasn't eaten anything in 3 days, she whispered. "She gives me her food. I just wanted to help." For a second, nobody on that street moved. Not Tiny. Not his brothers, Cruz, Mason, Bertie, and Wells, who had pulled up behind him and now stood frozen, watching a grown man's hands start to shake. Because Tiny knew exactly what hunger looked like on a child's face. He'd seen it before, once, a long time ago, in a house he didn't talk about anymore. A little sister he couldn't save, and kneeling there on that broken sidewalk, something old and buried cracked open in his chest. "Where's your dad, kiddo?" he asked quietly. "He doesn't come around," Daisy said simply, the way children state hard truths without knowing they're hard. "It's just me and Mommy. She lost her job. The man said she costed too much money." It took some gentle questions and a little patience, but the story came out in pieces. Renee had worked for almost 6 years at a regional event staffing company, until the owner, a man named Dale Petrov, decided to cut payroll right before the holidays to boost his year-end bonus. Renee had begged for 2 more weeks, just enough time to line up something else. Petrov told her the budget didn't bend for hardship stories. She'd been let go with a single paycheck and no severance. Since then, the heat had gone out in their apartment. The fridge had gone empty. And Renee, too proud to call a shelter, too exhausted to keep searching, had said nothing to anyone, until her 6-year-old daughter quietly decided to sell her doll on a street corner instead. Tiny didn't say a word. He reached into his vest, pulled out his wallet, and pressed every bill in it into Daisy's small hand, folding her fingers gently around it. "Keep your doll, baby girl," he said, his voice cracking. "She doesn't need a price tag." But that wasn't where it ended. Not even close. The next morning, 5 motorcycles rolled up outside a glass office tower downtown, Petrov Event Group, etched in steel letters above the door. The receptionist barely had time to look up before 5 leather-clad strangers walked past her desk with the kind of calm that doesn't ask permission. Dale Petrov looked up from behind his desk, annoyed, then visibly uneasy, as Tiny set something down in front of him. A small cardboard sign, slightly bent, with a child's careful handwriting still visible on it. "Recognize this?" Tiny asked. "No, why would you? You never met the kid whose mother you cut loose for a bonus check." Petrov started talking about budgets, about hard decisions, about business being business. Tiny let him finish every word. Then he leaned in. It stopped being business the day a 6-year-old tried to sell her doll for grocery money. Nobody raised a hand. Nobody had to. 5 bikers simply stood there until the silence said everything that needed saying. What happened next never made the papers with anyone's name attached to it. Renee's overdue bills were quietly paid off. A new job opened up, better hours, real benefits, at a company Bertie happened to know well. And by the end of that week, Petrov had reinstated severance for everyone he'd let go that year, along with a donation to a local family shelter that nobody could quite trace back to him, though everyone in town had their guesses. When the bikers rode back to check on Daisy a few days later, she came running out the door so fast she nearly tripped over her own oversized sneakers, doll clutched against her chest. Renee stood in the doorway behind her, thinner than she should have been, but standing tall and smiling for what looked like the first time in a long while. "You didn't have to come back," she said softly. "Didn't have to," Tiny said, smiling under his beard. "Wanted to." They sat together on the front steps that evening, bikers, a tired mother and a little girl with a button-eyed doll, sharing a paper bag of sandwiches while 5 motorcycles cooled at the curb, and the sky turned gold over a street that, for one evening, felt a little less broken than it had that morning. Winter came hard that year, the kind that turns breath to fog and makes old wounds ache. But the little apartment on Maple Street had heat now, and a fridge that was never empty, and a window that didn't rattle anymore because Wells had quietly come by one Saturday and fixed it himself, refusing to take $1 for the trouble. Daisy started a new school that spring. She wore shoes that actually fit, and taped inside her backpack, where only she could see it, was a small folded piece of cardboard, the same sign she'd once held on a cracked sidewalk, asking strangers to buy her doll. She kept it, she told her mother, so I don't forget what kindness looks like. The bikers never asked for anything in return. They came by sometimes, Tiny on Sunday afternoons mostly, fixing things that didn't need fixing just so he'd have a reason to stay for dinner. Birdie taught Daisy how to whistle. Cruz brought her a real toy for her birthday, but she kept the old doll on her pillow anyway, button eye and all. Renee got back on her feet slowly, then all at once, the way recovery tends to happen. She started her new job that winter, and within a year was training other women who'd landed in the same place she once had. Out of work, out of options, too proud to ask for help until someone showed up before they had to. As for Dale Petrov, nobody ever confirmed it was guilt that changed him. Maybe it was the quiet kind of fear 5 bikers are good at leaving behind in a room. Maybe, somewhere under all that ambition, there was a conscience that just needed a hard enough knock. Either way, the company he ran looked different a year later, fairer, slower to cut corners, slower to forget that numbers on a spreadsheet have faces behind them. Tiny never talked much about that day on Maple Street. But the people who knew him best said something in him had healed a little. The same week, a 6-year-old girl taught a grown man that the smallest voices sometimes carry the loudest truths. Because that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or engines or grand speeches. Sometimes it just kneels down on a cracked sidewalk, looks a frightened child in the eye, and says, "You don't have to sell what little you have left. Not today. Not ever if I have anything to say about it. If this story moved you, hold on to that feeling for a second longer than usual, and maybe pass a little of it on to someone today. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can show up in the most unexpected places, take a second to like this video, drop a comment below, and subscribe to channel name for more stories like Daisy's. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Tiny's place?